Welcome to Art Traffic. Let's get going.
Cool. I done nothing to prepare.
Oh, good. No, that's the best, I promise you.
I was just like trying to write you back in New York. And I was like, oh yeah, good. Like if I don't write people back right away, then I just forget it.
Oh yeah, same. This week, we're interviewing Essence Harden. Essence is a curator and doctoral candidate at Berkeley for African American Studies. She's originally from Oakland and now living and working in Los Angeles. This is a great interview, lots of energy, and we really appreciate Essence coming all the way down to Long Beach through the bumper-to-bumper traffic in order to do the interview. Here we go with Essence Harden. We are here with Essence Harden, and she is interesting to us because she is doing curatorial projects right now. And we don't get too many curators on the show, so thank you so much for being here with us, Essence.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you would, give us a little background. Where do you come from and all that kind of good stuff?
All the good things. Yeah. So I'm from Oakland, California, and I was born there, was raised there, and in between Berkeley, which is like another small town in the East Bay. My parents are from there. My grandparents are from there, so it's very deep East Bay vibes. Yeah. I went, and because of that, so Oakland, back in the day at least, is like a hard space to be from, economically speaking. And so I went to public school in Berkeley, which is also a hard place, economically speaking, but just a lot more diversity, ethnically and class-wise. So the schools were much better. Mm-hmm. And I went to public school in Berkeley essentially till right now, right? Because I'm in a PhD program at UC Berkeley. I went there for undergrad as well. I also went to community college in Oakland and Berkeley, and then K through 12 in preschool. So
wow, so they're like
it's like bizarre.
They get to claim you now forever, right? They're just like, we made this
this person who can't stop going to school here.
And I think they get your brain after you're dead.
Yeah, you sign some shit when you work for UC Berkeley. They're like, anything you think of is ours. Some weird oath shit, and like an oath to California at the same time. So
that's like a Westworld thing.
It is, weird. But it's real and bizarre. And I was like, there's a way I cannot do this? But they're like, no. Yeah, I think it's for the scientists. But anyways, not me. So I'm from the Bay, and my stuff with art, essentially, I was just telling Jahari, who I'm like married to, the other day, I was like, oh, when I was little, I used to put down like artists for the job that you wanted to have when you were a kid. And then as time went on, I essentially became an educator for a fairly long time, and I graduated with a history degree from UC Berkeley. And I used to write about sort of Black cultural movements and aesthetics, a lot about Black masculinity and style and politics from the 1970s and the 1980s, trying to sort of reconstitute and renegotiate what it meant for people to go from having naturals and afros to like having processed hair, and me trying to frame processed hairstyles as another sort of radical move for Black masculinity. And that was pretty fun. And then I got into the graduate school program at Berkeley in AFRAM, and African American Studies. And I continued on with that project, and then basically I've just like brutalized myself into a decade of writing about the same thing. And so now I don't write about that anymore. I just couldn't do it because basically like 5 years ago, I started to get really invested in making art, and it became a way for me, I think, to save my mind. When you're in academia, and I come from like, I'm the only person to go to college in my family, stuff like that. Yeah. And so there's no root system set for support when it comes to shit like this. And then I also went to community college, so I don't even have like the prestigious upbringing nor the prestigious educational path to get me to where I am.
You're amongst friends.
Yeah, so then you're like, it's all bizarre. You're in the space and you're an alien, and people already feel like alienated who are like in any sort of marginal position going to the academy. But then I'm like, there's no one in my life who does this shit. And I was losing my mind a little bit, and I was like, oh, here's a thing that can like save my mind. I met Jahari, who I'm married to, as I said already, and he's a painter, he's a DJ, and he like makes music, but he's such a forefront art person. Like he's like, this is life, this is all I do, and there's not going to be a capacity for me to not have that be at my center. Yeah. And I was like deeply inspired by that, and so we started collaborating, making projects. We did this sort of installation at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco, YBCA, in like 2014 maybe. And then I was just like, oh, I just gotta make stuff. Like that's the only way to do this. And I think because I come from a research background and it's interdisciplinary in nature, I just curating felt like a natural path. And thinking about the marriage between research and writing and art making and practice, for me at least. Because I think being a good curator essentially is being a good researcher and developing ideas to, make shows.
In a perfect setting. Yeah, no, you're my favorite curator, or style or type of curator that's out there. Is like someone who's really doing the homework.
Yeah, it's a lot of fucking homework.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's cool as fuck. I like it a lot, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of research and time and studio visits and, I think a level of deep humbleness because I essentially am not an art historian and I don't come from a background of an art world, and the Bay has a bizarre art practice scene anyways, right?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it's really different than any other metropolitan area that I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool and I love it, and it also means that I'm trying to negotiate the multitude of spaces that I can exist in, and also the sort of institutional frameworks that force your hand in certain ways to exist. So curating, I just basically curated a show. It started in 2016 and the show happened in 2017.
My dog's really trying to get Essence's attention right now, really, really hard. You're gonna go outside if you can't behave like this is a podcast.
No one can see how cute you are, but I can.
I know. Did you see how the attention was not on him, and he was just all like, "The attention's on her. I'm gonna go and." And he got it. Look, we're all focused on you now, Russell. So how did you guys get down to LA from being like we're saying Bay Area, like, and you were talking about being like the alien in the academic situation, and you were like, did you like that alien feeling? What happened? Like, how did you I'm gonna just relocate to a whole other city and be the alien over there too?
Totally. My best friend.
Or maybe you got an immunity to it. I don't know.
No, LA's been pretty generous and maybe it's a world outside of itself or the known world for me, so it feels like an alien planet where there's multiple aliens or something, everyone feels sort of bizarre in a way that I could really enjoy.
Yeah, I have deep thoughts on this.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
No. This is I'm not being interviewed, but after this we'll talk about it, and it's
it's weird here, but I think
the nature of how it was built.
Yeah, exactly, right? So the built landscape and then the general topography of the place, it's bizarre enough that I feel home here, oddly. After 3 years, it's been in July would be 3 years. Yeah, it's July, right? Or June, I don't know.
Yeah, but being in a relationship, you all had to make that decision together, and it was
so the Bay is bizarre. The Bay is going through immense change, right? And it's deeply expensive to live there. My apartment was mad cheap. I've lived there for a decade. It's $800. It's in North Oakland. It is bomb. But my apartment's cheap, but no one else's is. And so your friends, your family, everyone kind of doesn't live near you. And part of the thing that made it home is that there's people. But when there's a lack of people that are my people, it doesn't feel like home.
Yeah.
And so I took my qualifying exams, which are your oral exams for PhD stuff, and those are brutal and grueling. And my best friend, since I was 12, she moved here to work on a TV show. And that was pretty random in and of itself. And basically, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go to LA a bunch and I'm going to figure out how to love this place because I'm going to just move here.
Right on.
So then it took like 9 months. And I took my exams and we moved 2 weeks after that. Yeah.
Wow.
And Johari is just very like chill about everything. It's like, okay, you want to do this? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that the barrier to entry to the art world to LA is lower than in other places. Like people are in general like want to hear new perspectives. And
yeah.
Like, have you found that to be pretty true?
Yeah. I feel it's kind of like that West Coast thing, right? Where the West has room and space. When you can see the sunrise and the sunset pretty much from most places here, it does something to you in a way that, like, I was just in New York, right? And I was like, damn, you know, it's either the sun is out or the sun is gone, but it's very hard to, like, see process or change.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm also, like, running around all day, but it's real. It's a hard thing to grapple with, but it is certainly a part of the reality of being in California. The capacity to sort of have space and room to grow and change. And I think LA does offer that in a way that the Bay, because it's very small, doesn't offer it, or it's very hard to offer at least. LA's just like bizarre, and there's a million little cities within itself because it's a bunch of suburbs.
Yeah, and then there's just this vast desert out to the east, and you can just wander out into it.
Yeah, like easily.
Weird way and get lost.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's extra as fuck, but I do think that that's real, that I've had a very easy time coming forward with an idea that I think is good and having people be like, yo, I'll support that. And then once one thing happens, like a million things have happened.
Right.
Which I really appreciate. And I don't think that could happen in New York. And I don't think that could even happen in the Bay Area.
Yeah, we're noticing a lot of New Yorkers coming out here right now. And
they're intense.
Yeah, their culture shock seems to be the most extreme.
Yeah,
maybe of everybody's.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true. I think between the train and the driving, that's like the big thing.
Oh, those are really huge.
But then the mellowness of California, where I'm like, aggro temperament is not going to work here.
No, and then, like
people will shut down and be like, I don't want to hang out with you.
Yeah, and then. They also freak out on the strangest things, like our little things. Like, I think our food fads kind of freak them out a little bit. I hear people like freak out about like cold pressed juices. Like,
yeah, but they love that shit. They love a cold pressed juice. And I'm like, if you don't want a cold pressed juice, go to like any spot that like. There's mad Oaxacan food here, right?
Oh, I know.
And I'm like, you can get a fucking juice that isn't cold pressed and delicious and organic and like $4.
Yes.
But you can't be a dickwad, you know, when you walk into this place. Like, the expectation there needs to be a level of humbleness and appreciation for where you are. Not that all people who live in New York and move here are like that, but there is this like, you know, high energy level.
Yeah, it's like a go type of culture. And
it's just, I'm like, sorry, it's California. It's just like a type of impossibility here. Like, get used to it. And then, like, you know, take care of yourself because of it.
Right.
Now you have time to, like, meditate.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. Mm-hmm. So, how about what you're working on right now as far as, like, your curatorial projects? You're working on a couple right now.
Yeah, I have, like, it feels like a lot. I'm like, too many? No, not too many. I have a show.
Well, like you're saying, there's a lot of homework involved.
Yes, and it's, like, they're all different shows, so then it's just, like, and then I changed my dissertation, so I'm, like, always kind of reading a million things and trying to ground them. So I have a show in July at Lace with Emory Douglas. And with Daniela, who also works at Lace, actually, we're co-curating it. And it's basically about, like, his graphic design as a type of social protest project for the Black Panther Party and the newspaper. And that so much of his graphics have actually sort of motivated and moved people, like, past that moment, including himself, who he, like, is still remixing these images for current moments or positions. So it's got Emory, it's got Patrick Martinez who's here, it's got Sadie Barnett who's here, it's got this sort of cool collaboration Emory did with the Zapatistas, where these women embroidered old sort of iconic poster images that Emory had done to be in relationship to like Zapatista struggle. They're really incredible.
Yeah.
So the show is like in July. It's dope. It's in the storefront. We love it.
When was that project done? I haven't seen
Not
it.
that long ago, like maybe 2010 or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not. Emory's out here just fucking
no,
grinding.
for sure. Yeah.
And he's so rad and like lovely. And he's from the Bay. He's from San Francisco, and he still lives there, though he's traveling all the time. So it was really cool going to his studio and like chatting with him. He's just very generous and radical in practice. So like, depending on what kind of institution you are, he'll be like, this is $5 or this is way more than that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's something I think about all the time is
it's pretty
kind
dope.
of the politics of pricing, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
It feels very old school Bay that way too, where I'm like, that's how you do it. Where you're like, these people can afford to pay, these people can't afford to pay, but they're doing something pretty incredible. And Lace is a really awesome exhibition space.
Yeah,
and I love
great
the gallery.
venue.
Yeah.
Like an LA institution in a town
Yeah.
that doesn't really have too many institutions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
And a really
that's-
rad one at that. Yeah.
it's
for having it.
Yeah, it's a really great one. They've done they've just been at the front of exhibitions for a long time.
Yeah.
And they've given just about everybody their first shot, which is kind of their claim to fame.
They're pretty cool.
And so they're if you could call it alumni, I guess, would be like artists that have been there. It's pretty much it's an awesome list.
It is like their benefit show where they get artists to donate, so then people could, they can support themselves as a space is pretty incredible. The amount of people who love Lace and are bawling and are like, yeah, here's a piece.
Yeah.
Make that
totally.
money.
Yeah, it's wild to even think that would be a thing, but yeah, it's a
pretty
testament.
cool. It's pretty cool. So that's in July. I have a show in September at MoAD at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. That's in September. It's a bunch of print work from Black artists, and we're thinking around how print and collaboration are other ways to like create work, basically. It's the premise of that show. And then in October, I have a show at the LGBT Center's exhibition space with Aaron. And that is around like same gender desire and love and romance, but it's like sexy. Like it's not like holding hands necessarily, but we're interested in ideas around like intimacy and sex and eroticism.
Yeah.
Like between people who are women.
Yeah, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's just like 2018. So now I'm trying to like focus for 2019.
Yeah,
and
I'm really thrilled that you could make it out here, and the fact that you came all the way down to Long Beach. I mean, we are kind of like considered to be like this far away place from the rest of Los Angeles.
It's 20 miles from my house, but the traffic was just terrible.
Yeah. No, it's like
it's not far, really.
Everything kind of like below the 10 is just a roll of the dice as far as if it's going to be open or not.
Yeah.
With traffic. It's gnarly.
Yeah, I checked like yesterday morning and I was like, oh, it's like 30 minutes away. And I was like, this morning I was like, oh, it's an hour away. My bad.
I mean, one of the beautiful things about traffic out here is that when the Siri or whatever it is like talking to you and the robot voice is like, it's a half hour away. No, just kidding. It's 35 minutes away. And you're like, but I'm going forward.
Yeah.
No, it's 40 minutes away. No, now it's 45 minutes away.
And
you're like, I'm going back in time.
It's wild. That's what it feels like. Yeah, it's weird, man. I can get all aggro about it or just be like, I don't know. I was like, I am running 10 minutes late. I say that so often now. I'm like, I am behind 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I am behind.
Like, this traffic thing should be a breeze for you, though, because I've been to the Bay Area, and those bridges are not a joke.
Yeah, but I'm in the East Bay. I barely drove.
You don't go to the city, huh?
Or we take the BART if I really want to go. But, Yeah, you kind of, it's very small, you know. East Bay people were like, oh, San Francisco, it's so far. It's literally like 10 miles away. It takes 15 minutes. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just rarely drove that much. So that was the big, I still have my bikes, but like, yeah, I was going to take the train here and I was like, oh, it's going to take 2 hours. Okay, never mind. I'm going to drive my car. It's like, oh, the train, that'll be fun. And
I
I'm like,
know. That's
no,
why
it
we're
won't be
having such a
fun.
problem down here with the mass transit.
You know, it's
Um,
rough.
So, getting back a little bit more to the curatorial stuff, you were talking about how much homework it is, and I totally respect the fact that you do the homework. Not everyone does.
Yeah.
But what is, like, how is the decision making process for you as a curator? Are you like, I'm thinking of theme first, or are you like, I have to use these artists and then the theme comes out of it, or how is your process?
Cool question. I don't know. Which is probably because
Well, let's take one of those
differs.
shows. How did it
Yeah.
come about at Lace or at the LGBT
Yeah.
center?
So I could say that for the show Black is a Color, which is the first show I curated, it was a mix between two artists who are my friends who are also incredible, and I was making a presentation about their work, and I was just sort of like staring at it over because I was like, you know, whatever, putting slides into PowerPoint, and I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck's going on with all this like neon and this weird type of abstraction, and it made my brain just sort of wonder. And as I was staring at the color and the form of their work, which are very different, but there was like something really rich, then I just like had an idea. And I just talked to one of them about it. I was like, oh, I was just thinking about this when I was looking at both of your works in conversation. And they were like, that's a good idea. I'm going to talk to my gallerist. I think you should curate a show. And I was like, haha. And then she did, because she's very like,
Yeah.
you're going to do this. And I was like, oh, I'm scared. But so that was kind of like that with me sort of staring at something and then like having my brain sort of wonder. With Lace, so Daniela and Sarah, who's like the ED at Lace, like came to me and were like, we have this beginnings of a show. We would like you to like be a part of this. And I was like, cool, Emory Douglas, I can do this.
Oh yeah.
And then once I'm there, then it was like, okay, so this is the sort of touchstone is Emory and his work, but how do we think about Emory like in the present? Like how do we, and him as a person who's still making work, as a living artist, not as a historical figure who's
Right. Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
Which often happens to him because he did this work when he was 20.
Yeah, and and it defined
Yeah.
a moment, and a big moment.
Very, very much so. It's iconic. But then what do you do after that if you're still like here and he's here and he's making things in relationship to that, but he's still here. So then that became like me thinking of artists who aren't in direct sort of descent of him, but I think in conversation with his idea, which is why I was like Patrick Martinez as a person who uses a type of social practice.
Yeah.
It seems like could be, I mean, he maybe could be here without Emory, but maybe not, right? And so that was that. Or the show at the LGBT Center, Aaron was like, I have a very like humble beginnings of an idea. Do you want to figure this out with me? And so that's been like a really collaborative process because she was like, I have this venue and this date and like an inkling of something. So how can we develop this? And like, not, so we have like a million studio visits together and like, it's more time than the other shows, right? It's in October. So, and we've been talking about this for like 4 months. So I've had like the longest amount of time maybe with Aaron, but yeah, I think the co-curating comes from people bringing me in, and then the things that I've done on my own, I think, are really motivated by, it's like at the same moment of someone's form, of a particular artist's like form, and also me thinking thematically once I'm like sitting there with the work. Yeah. It just feels kind of like a constellation in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
A messy constellation, but nonetheless.
And when you mentioned earlier that you're looking at 2019 now, is that like, are those shows forming like you have an idea now you need a venue, or is it like, are you just getting kind of overwhelmed with
No,
requests or
no. I feel like I
'cause
have idea.
both things seem to happen all together, don't they? Like,
Yeah.
like you have too much of one thing or too much of the other, and the balance is always the thing that you're trying to achieve.
Totally. So maybe life is just never balanced. I don't know, but it feels like
I think it's kind of our task, isn't it, to just try to find balance?
yeah, I try to find things that are grounding so that I can do the multiple things, and maybe that becomes like my own body becomes a type of balance more than like what work looks like. That just feels kind of like I have to have a lot of like flow and capacity to like change gears and be open. But yeah, I think 2019 right now I have like show ideas and people I want to work with, and so while I'm doing these other shows, I'm also just always having studio visits with people. And that's why I went to New York, because it's good for my brain to like look at a million art shows, right? To think about how other people are curating, to think of what is 2018 looking like, how can 2019 shape out, what are sort of venues or spaces or other artists or exhibition spaces that might just be of interest to me to be in conversation with. And so it's always sort of this looking ahead while also trying to be very present, because I have work to do like now. And that's hard, but I think I just have to do it. So I'm like, I have to drink water, and I have to meditate twice a day, and I have to drink Tulsi, and I have to turn off my phone at like 7:00 at night and like not read emails and just like make time for my brain.
Yes.
And then in the middle, and I'm like, maybe on Sundays I don't respond to anything pretty much. So it's like that's so I can do all the other stuff that I want to do. Because the art stuff, the curating is very fun. I like it quite a bit. I like thinking about this, and I like researching about this, and I like visiting people and talking to folks about art stuff. It's the best part of doing all of this shit.
Yes.
And I also have to like write a dissertation, which is in conversation with these things. So now it doesn't feel like an appendage that I am dragging.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh, it's like this really vital, third
part
leg.
of the entire practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I should have done it a while ago, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a slow person. I'm a tourist.
Oh, goodness. Me too. So, about studio visits. We have a lot of artists that listen to the podcast, and they give us beautiful feedback, and that's great. And I'm glad that you mentioned studio visits. How important is that to you when you're trying to figure out this show and how it's gonna like when you're trying to flesh it out? Are you like finding new things when you go to this studio visit and then you're just like the show changes, or is it more like you're looking for something and hopefully you find it there?
Cool question. Well, cool, yeah. What am I looking for? I am hella open. I think because I don't have training I didn't have an MFA in this thing, even though I think curatorial MFAs are a whole other business that we could talk about or not.
Oh yeah.
I am like, I like this person. I like what I've seen of their work. And
So it's the work that gets you in the door first.
That gets me in the door, yeah. But then once I'm in the door, I'm like, what is your mind like? And then they're like, I'm doing something totally different. And I'm like, dope, that looks so cool. Let's do that. Like, that's kind of how it goes for me. I have less of a marriage to things I've seen because artists are constantly making new shit. And I think so many people get like pigeonholed into something they've done. And then they're like, I like I've seen this, and I like these things only. But you're like, you're talking to a living person whose mind is expanding, who's making work all the time.
No, we get that a lot. Can you make 12 more of these?
Yeah, that sucks. That's not fair. And
no, it's what I feel like artists are constantly fighting against it.
Yeah.
You know, it's I feel like artists want to expand what they're able to do or what they can get permission to do, either if it's permission from themselves or from powers that be or gatekeepers of various kinds. And artists are trying to always get permission and more freedom, and so that's that balance you know that we're talking about. But you need to be seen too, so if you have some work that people want to see, try to give them that, but also at the same time expanding. It's a delicate.
It is a pretty delicate space, and I feel like I'm really open to people as expansive entities. I think by virtue of who I am, and that I'm like, I love that I have the capacity to be in a PhD program and be a writer and be a curator and make art and like just made a pair of shoes for like a company. Like I'm just like, I like that I get to do all those things. And so I imagine that other people, especially people who are creative, especially artists in particular, have the same capacity. And so it's like the art gets me in the door, but like the personality and the mind will keep me there.
Yeah. Right.
So if you're cool as fuck, I'm like gonna be really intrigued by that. I like how people's minds work. I like the kind of, change people can make over time. And I think as I do the job, I'm learning, and I think a real thing is being like, these are my people. So when you have an opportunity, someone's like, yo, I have this space and I have these dates. I really value your mind as a curator. So what would you want to do there? You being like, I have these people who I'm constantly in conversation with, so that when you get opportunity, you can you can put them in your show, right? That it kind of works together. Like artists get opportunities and might want someone to write an exhibition catalog or an essay for this or that. And you're like, cool, I got you. I can do that because I'm, essentially in conversation with your work. Someone like Thelma Golden, who is like, the queen curator of maybe like not all time, but certainly in this like 20th and 21st century, is someone who has these very long lasting relationships with people like Glenn Ligon and Lorna Simpson, so that she's been with their work for over 30 years and she knows it like the back of her hand, and also can push them and they can push her, in their own growth and development in their, fields. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I think about it, where I'm like, I want these to be my people, and I want to grow and develop with them so that we are kind of able to occupy the same spaces often.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting that you said that. And I think it's something that happens as far as that interchange with the artist and the curator. Mm-hmm. I think I don't want to admit that it happens because, I think... I hate to bring myself into the topic, but it's germane. I want authorship, mm-hmm. But the truth is that all of it is a conversation. Mm-hmm. It's a conversation between the artists, between the curators, between the institutions, between the whole of the art world is constantly in this conversation where we're going to see shows, we're talking to people in shows, and whether or not we directly get to work with them at any given moment, there is this like tapestry that's being woven all the time. Absolutely. Constantly. And I think being a part of that in any kind of way is sort of the like exciting part. And if you get to be woven into it at some point, that's the stuff.
Yeah. Authorship just kind of seems like a inherently collaborative process of the mind. Like you're inspired by things you've read when you were 10 to now, and when you're doing your own, maybe because also academic writing is deeply citational writing, so you're like, you're always in conversation with someone else's ideas to even be able to have your idea. So it feels like generative to me to think about, I don't know, the tapestry of sort of being, and that then the things that are individual moves or marks are deeply embedded in this like sort of collective, maybe not vision, but a collective capacity of thought or something. Yeah. And that's cool because it's your relation to that is a type of, like food cycle or something, right? Like it's all necessitates belonging to the other. And I think then you can sort of generate really incredible ideas, and then you're not also trying to surpass the idea that people have made things before you. and we're making things after you, or we're making things at the same moment as you. You know, you
Yeah.
have a good idea and you say it out loud and you're like, what the fuck? Someone else is like literally doing that right now.
Yeah.
It makes no fucking sense, or it makes all the sense in the world.
No, this has happened to me, and it's happening again right now.
You're like, holy shit.
No. It's like, no, it's not. Like, okay, the first time it ever happened to me where I was making a specific project, and it was taking duration. It was a full year-long process. It involved body modification and process and linear time and all this other stuff. So it took a lot of energy and work and time to do this piece, and I found out that somebody was doing the exact same piece.
Wild.
Geographically not far away. And I was like, we were talking about authorship, like enraged.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they stole my idea. I own it. You know, like,
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the best lessons of my entire career as an artist, because I realized that they weren't stealing it. It was just in the wind, so to speak, if I can just kind of be poetic about that. But it was like what you were just talking about. It's, you know, ideas are reactions to all kinds of things that are happening, be they political, be they, you know, socioeconomic, be they, you know, like all kinds of factors, right? You know, and it's not surprising that we would have like lots of reactions and a need to consume political art right now, because, you know, I am having that feeling because I'm angry about our political situation, you know, so I'm like going backwards and looking at artwork that's just like angry, you know, you know, because that's what I'm experiencing.
Right.
So I guess what the question I'm kind of leading up to is, does thought have trend? Do ideas have fashion to you? And is that a net positive or negative?
Yeah, do ideas have fashion? I mean, I imagine they do have things come in and out of vogue, right? And so if that's true, not all things, but there are moves, and especially it seems with institutions. And so if art is an institution that we all kind of exist in to some degree between museums and galleries, then they like to like kind of feed off of each other and to support this sort of capitalism, right? And because of that, I think there's a way that ideas get distilled and certain things become popular, and then they get really deeply pushed for whatever moment that they want them to be, and then they kind of change, much like fashion, much like maybe anything. And not that there aren't people who are outliers and sort of existing in a much more expansive space, but I think the way that institutions funnel ideas is to make things be in vogue for whatever amount of time. And I think like, so, you know, there's a way that like I get to curate shows that have largely Black folks, people of color, and women, because it's hot for galleries right now to want to show those types of people, even though, you know, for the majority of Western art history, that's not true.
No.
So like I get to become a curator by virtue of this, and that's a real ass thing. And people get to have emerging art careers because of this, and that's a real thing.
Yes.
And also it points to something very disillusioning about, I think, sort of existence. And, you know, I mean, I could go on, but it's like, you know, between capitalism and its like force and the force it has for racism and sort of neoliberalism, it's a net negative. It's terrible. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And also here I am existing within it. And so, you know, we're constantly compelled by institutional frameworks, even as we push back through them, with them, and against them. You know, you're compelled by them. And so, you know, you're like, I would like to live inside, so I'm going to have to figure out whatever that looks like for me. Or I would like to be a fucking working artist for my life, so I'm going to have whatever 5 jobs to make that also possible for me.
Yes.
Or do commercial work, because that's the way I'm going to get paid to be able to have, you know, a studio to do my work that I want to be doing.
Yes.
And so that kind of feels like ideas being in vogue is like we're working again against and with them I think by virtue of the frameworks that we have to sort of exist within. Even, and maybe that's like, a bummer, but it also is a type of truth. And so maybe if you have, I guess, the tools and like the cognition around it, you're in a sort of muck of living, then maybe there's a real way to actually reimagine what it means to be here, you know? But there's the first step always seems to be in recognition of where you're at. And where we're at is like messy.
Yeah.
And gross.
Yeah.
And also really beautiful and brilliant in other ways.
Yeah. Superhuman. And I would like to also point out to everyone on the podcast that Essence brought up capitalism first. Okay? Usually it's me. And I've been accused of ranting on this topic. But we just can't get away from the fact that our art world exists within these market-driven forces.
It's like a vice culture. It feels like mafia shit out here.
Yes.
Like,
it really does. It really does.
Not gentle.
No.
It is money. It is rough. It's gnarly.
That was the quote right there. It is not gentle.
No.
Yeah, and
it's like vice lords. It literally feels like drug underworld shit. It's like whoever is buying shit for $21 million, like this is not regular.
Right. But, and like going back to what you were talking about sort of like this, if I can call it sort of a wave of, this is like what my thing is all of a sudden having this wave of popularity, and now the center wants it, so we can kind of like ride this wave maybe into the center for a little while. And then is it possible, I guess, to kind of like steer? Like, I think this thing is an out of control mess all the time, like the margins trying to get into the center and the center, getting pushed into the margins, and all this is like, it's a constant process. But if I'm explaining that, like, I don't know if I'm coming out clear enough on this, but have you ever had a moment where you felt like I could possibly steer this a little, or I could influence it, or I could kind of like...
Yeah.
I'm not saying anyone's ever going to have control.
Right.
But
you can have some sort of agency in your lack of freedom. Yeah, I think there is, I like talking, apparently. So I'm always like, I'm a quiet person. But then I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Because part of it is like, I'm a Black person who's alive in this country. So I have a capacity to like, not only be like living in relationship to a lack of freedom, but also having some sort of capacity to steer my changed self, if that makes sense. So that's why I like go to school, for instance, or whatever. And I decide to not have a job that's a 9-to-5 so I can do this other shit that I want to do. It means I'm, often like broke and all this other kind of shit, but I have my time, and for some reason, I like that more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I don't have children, I have a person, I have a cat. It's like, I have time, and I love that shit. I think there's all kinds of ways. And I think that's why I'm here. That's why I like this shit. So I don't work with, I think I try to push as far as I push myself to be uncomfortable, to get ideas and people showing that I think are doing the same thing, right? So it's like, I want to be always on the verge of deep discomfort with my own mind. And I want people who are also on the verge of deep discomfort with their own art, who are not feeling settled or like secure necessarily, but they're like, this is going to be really hard, but I'm going to do this thing anyways. So I feel like if we're always in that conversation where we're like, not set, then I can work with institutions or galleries, whatever, who are like, cool, I'm down to do that. So like Charlie James Gallery in Chinatown, very rad. Charlie has such an incredible roster of people he represents, and also the shows he does and the room he has for you to come with an idea that's kind of like as wild as you want it to be, as long as you can sort of ground it in the gallery space. But, I had Keon Gaskin perform at the closing for that show, and he's a person who doesn't like to qualify his art, but it is a type of performance art, I would say, and dance. And Keon is deeply incredible and wild as fuck, and has a frying pan, it's like hitting on glass, it's all kinds of really intensity. It's makes everyone deeply uncomfortable. Not everyone, but a lot of people uncomfortable. And also Charlie let that happen in a space, and it was tight. And I really appreciated the sort of all of us reaching towards a moment beyond our own comfort.
Yeah.
So we can actually engage the space of the gallery or whatever institution to challenge itself and do more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let us break down that, I guess that dance is what I want to call it, of people entering into the gallery, and it's this solemn space, and we're going to go and we're going to spend our 3 seconds with this piece hanging on the wall and this object on the pedestal and this, that's a great moment. I really loved what you had to say right there about being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's just that. I mean, that is what it's about. And I think
that's how you get good at stuff too.
I just really, yeah. And I really just appreciate you sharing that with us, because if you don't mind, I'm going to use that as a way to explain to people when they're just I don't get what they call modern art, but they mean contemporary. But, that's the thing I hear all the time is people that's I don't get modern art, it's, it's this or that or whatever. And how could it be you turned a toilet upside down and now it's, I'm supposed to get that, or it's supposed to be art. First there's this whole idea of virtuosity. There must be this virtuoso performance in some aspect. I have evidence of it, I have an artifact of it, or I can see it happening in the moment that can show me your years of dedication. But maybe my years of dedication were wholly, totally put into my brain.
Yeah.
And then this is the idea, and in 30 years you're going to be eating this up.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about is artists' jobs are to be out there 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody else is
to be uncomfortable and to not, maybe you don't get everything in this moment. It sucks, but I also am it makes the world better, dare I say, when people are out of their minds and producing shit.
Yeah.
And then you get to revisit and you're what the fuck is this? This is so incredible.
Yeah, and that's partially your job too, is to give context to that.
Yeah.
So that other people can understand it. Right?
Yeah, and it's only who am I? I'm just a person. So it's I don't feel I'm I don't if I have the final word on anything, but I do know how to sit with some shit and try to think about it. And I think I'm really invested in affect and how an emotion is happening with or without a thing, or the paying attention to a want to get something immediately. And then you're talking about something that's happening internally in your body and this desire for finality. But what if you just have to be uncomfortable for a while and kind of sit and stare at something and then go home and think about it and then maybe go back and look at it again and then have your mind kind of working and bending and pulling so that you can actually get to somewhere that's far more expansive, essentially, and be kind of good with that instead of being settled and wanting things to be very discreet. But I don't really work towards endings, I'm just sort of
no, that's a great point too, is working towards endings. It's not just impossible, it's also kind of not that interesting, right?
Yeah,
it's what
finality doesn't seem very interesting to me, because I feel perhaps we don't live in a final stage of anything.
No, ever.
Right. If we're all kind of
the whole universe is constantly expanding.
Yeah.
What do we do? Yeah. Why would we try to wrap it up for you at the end of the 30-minute segment?
Yeah. And I think it seems actually kind of, because it's expanding, because your own body is doing, its own set of shit where it's decomposing kind of and recreating and regenerating at the same time often. That when we try to have finalized things, our minds kind of ache you know, in a way where like, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I'm like, you are making your own self feel sick or depressed or bummed around not getting a thing. When like, maybe if you were like, okay, I don't get it, it could be this sort of like, I don't know, you can like elevate your own like soul a little bit and then be sort of in a space of wonder. It's a hard, I'm not saying people who are going through depression or anxiety are people who could take,
No, we got
their
what you meant.
minds
We got
harder.
what you meant
Okay,
about
cool.
endings. We're
I'm
talking
like,
about in the context of endings.
yeah,
And trying
I'm
to
just like
trying to wrap things up
when you
in
want
an
to wrap
artistic
it up,
authorship type of way.
it's very hard. It's hard. It's a strain to hold on to something like that, and it's much less stressful to let go of a thing and let it sort of exist, and you just are working with it and through it constantly and being in conversation with something. I've read books lots of times. I've read Beloved like 10 times, right? And every time I read Beloved, I'm like, holy shit, new thing.
Yes.
It's words, right? It feels like it's a final product. It feels like it's done, it's finished, it's complete. But it's not those things because you are growing, you are changing, you are reading more things, you are existing in this world. And you revisit a book and you're like, holy fuck, I missed all of these things the first time because I was 16. And what the fuck did I know?
Yeah. No,
now you're like,
your relationship to the work is constantly changing.
Yeah. And that's cool. So I think discomfort is a fine space to be in or something.
Yeah. Just sitting here with you, I think that you might be a genius.
I'm definitely not a genius. I am regular as fuck.
No, I really do. I really think that there's like there's more genius in human beings than, I mean, okay, so maybe that's the wrong word. It's not descriptive enough. It's too weighted. Mm-hmm. But I will say that it really seems like you have processed a ton of material and you've formed new ideas out of that processed material and you're pushing the envelope forward.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
And that's for me what genius is. That's what
sick.
because I feel like for the most part people get to a zone of, now we're talking about discomfort and comfortability again, where they hit a zone of comfort and they want to stay there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like also like it strikes me as a bit of an impossibility, but it is a real thing that I feel like the vast majority of people want to do. They kind of don't want to be bothered. They just want to be sort of like, and
secure.
Now that I'm going to have this comfortability, I'm going to put this armor around me and I'm going to build these entrenched layers of whatever it is that allows them to stay in that comfortable zone.
Yeah.
And you have to be a special kind of a person to not want that, because I think that's a very human thing. I think back to even like Stone Age man type stuff, I think that's what it's constantly about for human beings, is we develop new technologies all the time in order to try to just be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and to be the one that is like
airport here.
Oh yeah, this is. Oh, you're experiencing. I say this a lot, but you're experiencing the reason I can afford this house.
Sick.
Okay,
like,
and it's like
here.
the tiniest California bungalow you've ever seen in your life. Like you're viewing the entire common area of this home all in one glance. You know.
No, this is like the house my grandma has. Awesome.
Oh yeah, but yeah, but. I do want to definitely say thank you so much for being with us. And this kind of brings us to our little like ending part here, where we have our final two segments that the audience loves. Side hustles and your challenge to us. So side hustles. We already kind of talked about it a little bit, about like we have to do all these other things so we can provide people with all of this free stuff.
Yeah, most of that. I mean, curating is not unless you're working, I think, for like maybe a
major museum, right?
You're not getting paid a lot of money at all. It's certainly not sustainable. So that's like one of the things I do. I'm a graduate student, so forever I've taught and then had like fellowships that also supplement, but like I have student loans.
Yes,
That's a thing I do.
Yeah, we all do.
Don't I ever? But then I'll speak on like panels, or I'll do like lectures and stuff, and that like is a little bit of cash. I also just made a pair of shoes for this company, Everybody World, which is really dope, LA company here. And they're cool, and you get like a portion of your sales. And I did it because I like their company and I think they're dope, and it's a really cute unisex like slide. So I did that, and I get money from that. I like wearing clothes that are nice. I'm a Taurus. I've already said that, but I'm like friends with people who make clothes, so I try to like get things for like exchanges for other shit. I think a lot of this, and I like art, and I like buying art. And that's why if you're friends with artists, and people are like, yo, like I want to support people's work, but also supporting work can look like a lot of things. And people are willing often to like negotiate and work with you who know you and love you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really cool. I'm like, what else do? I just do so much random shit. It feels like I'll get an opportunity. I'm like, cool, I'll do that. I like edit a journal for my department. So because I know how to use InDesign. So I'm like, yeah, cool, I can do that.
For sure.
Stuff like that. And I often will teach if I need to. It's not like a lot of cash, but it's a thing I like to do. I wish it was. I would be a teacher if teachers got paid a ton of fucking money.
Yeah, and I know what you were saying though about time being sort of like your currency in a way. It's like, you know, I don't want to say, okay, like you have 5 jobs, you know, and or however many it takes, or however many in this moment, but this art world thing takes everything you got. So it's like if you had a 60-hour week job, the art world would take the rest. If you had a 4-hour a week job, the art world would take the rest. You know?
Totally.
So it's kind of like an idea of sort of like working, not working. So trying to make your work feel not so much like work. Maybe.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, and that it'll take as much time as you give it. And I don't have a job that I go to like in an office somewhere. I've never had a job like that. I've basically been a waitress and then like this. So I'm like, I don't know what it means to like sit in a space forever, but I do work a lot. And I have time to work at my studio, to work from home, to work at a cafe, to like go to New York and answer emails on my phone. Like I have time to not be present every day somewhere, but I probably work more by virtue of that because I don't have a schedule. It's really hard to be like, I'm not going to work today. Like, I'm not going to answer anyone's emails or anyone's calls, and I'm just going to sit here and like think or whatever the fuck it is I would be doing. I'm like, it's just, if I'm reading, it's work. If I'm writing, it's work. Like made an experimental film with my friend 80. So like even watching movies is work, you know, like there's nothing that's just sitting here being like,
there's
I have
no
the day
passive
off.
That, right?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but seems like it could be cool. But yeah, everything feels relationship to the broad things that I like to do. And because I'm out here being like, I like curating and like this and I like that, and these things pay me a little bit, I find myself sort of, that kind of pleasure principle with work being very much married to each other so that I can do it.
Yeah.
Because I think this is work, right? Like, sitting
this
here
is
and
out
talking.
Here doing the hustle too. Like, we're gonna like promote you, and
it's just
having you on
good for
our
my
show
mind.
promotes our show. And, but the basis of it is that like nobody's gonna make necessarily cash off this transaction,
right?
But we will make like a larger presence.
Yeah, I don't think work always pays you, but I think work can like it can exchange in other types of currency. And I think my mind, I say time, but it's like I like thinking, so I like doing stuff that makes me have to work my brain muscles.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I'm like, yeah, it's good for me. It is. So it's like reading shit that's really hard. People don't like theory. A lot of the time, like, theory is hard and it's nonsense. And I'm like, oh, it's not nonsense. It is fucking hard. Also, it's deeply worthwhile often. And maybe it's going to take you a long time to read this fucking book. Read some other book in between. But, like, it's useful. I don't want to be a theorist like solely for my life's work, but I appreciate theory, and I appreciate like anything that makes my brain sort of like have to be uncomfortable and be like, fuck, I don't know enough words. I don't know what this means. I feel sad and I'm not sure why. Like I'll read something and be like, I feel really sad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, why do I feel sad? And I'm like sitting with this person's words and trying to have it reach me, or it's like sitting with someone's work, some abstract art, and you're just, bawling or whatever the fuck. I can like see a Sam Gilliam like hung painting, and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to sit here and like let myself feel this way. And then I find that to be a useful sort of exchange.
Yeah.
And work is lots of things. Sometimes work pays you, sometimes it doesn't with money. But I don't know, it's of use or something. It's like working out. People don't get paid to do that shit.
Yeah.
But it's good for your body, I guess.
Right. Okay, there's another question that I totally forgot to ask. How does living with another artist of a different kind,
Yeah.
influence, or how does that work as far as with your process and your work? Like,
yeah. I mean, Johari's
does
cool.
That change things? Does that change things for you, or give you a different perspective? Or
Yeah, it's certainly he's cool ass person. So he works all the time, like, and making things, which is partially why I guess I'm like, oh, like there's this real way that you can be working all the time, not necessarily for money, but it can be good for you. So my house is oriented around that kind of shit, right? That there's lots of like quiet time where like he's like making music or he's painting and I'm reading or writing, but our house isn't oriented around, I guess, sort of discrete entertainment, if that makes sense, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
So like the way our house is even set up is like a bunch of fucking records on our wall, and books, and that's pretty much what our living room looks like. So
you're still into the analog book thing with paper and pages and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
You
I
are?
love books.
Yeah.
I love books. I have 2 books in my bag all the time. I love reading. I love books. I love records. We have a lot of those too. And so I think a lot of it's like that's one way that it works for us. And also really having a person there who you can constantly have conversations with about art and art practice. It's deeply beneficial.
Yeah.
And like empathy for how to talk to people. People, I love artists, and also they can be very queen-like.
Yeah.
Very,
Challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like herding cats, like really moody cats.
Oh yeah.
That are like really beautiful.
So true.
Like an Egyptian, like whatever, like rare fucking $10,000 cat. Where you're like, oh my God, you're everything, and they're like,
I know.
Yeah, and then you're just like, fucking shit. So how to like corral people and be gentle with people and having a lot of empathy and care for folks who are sort of, I think, deeply sensitive, is cool. I am relatively sensitive, but I'm just kind of in my mind a lot. So, I can be sort of like flat or like forward with things that don't feel like a problem to me, but I think just living with someone who can be sensitive is cool in that way, because then you're like, oh yeah, like there's ways to get people to do things or to talk to people. I'm like, this person said this to me, and then Johari will be like, well, if you think about the history of them being in this place and like maybe 30 years or 40 years of like being in this world and this business, which is really fucked up, like it can alter people's capacity to like be trusting immediately. And you're new, so maybe that's why you can be so trusting or like open and forward with people, but they can, recoil to some amount, like a cat or whatever it is. So I think it's cool having a person who deals with lots of people in a different way on the other end, and then me trying to do, the job of corralling folks. And in our house, it's just like, it's for making stuff.
Yeah.
Our house is for like talking and making music and like writing and reading.
Yeah. Sounds like, I'm gonna let this plane pass a little bit. No, it sounds like a kind of an amazing place.
It's cute. It's tiny, but it's cute. We make do.
So what part of town do you live in?
East Hollywood, by LACC, like on the
Yes.
Normandy side.
Yes. Okay, so can I ask you one other question?
Yeah.
Okay, so as a curator, in reference to the art market, do you live and work in the production side or on the sales side?
Oh, I think production side.
Do you just not want you don't deal with that? Like
I don't
if
know how
it
to be a
comes to
salesman.
collectors or anything like that?
That's just really hard. It's like not a thing I don't know how to sell people shit. I'm
Yeah.
like, don't know. That's like the gallerist's job, I imagine. Like a gallery is a store essentially. So
Yeah, I can imagine that you'd be pressed into service.
yeah, it's weird. Like,
So there's that moment a
yeah.
lot in the opening when there's like,
yeah.
and this is our curator Essence. And
Yeah, and like you shake hands with people and you're
Yeah.
really present, and they can do that kind of like pageantry. It's hard. It's a thing that I'm learning how to do, and I don't know if I'll ever feel like that is the job that I'm interested in. But it's real. It's a real as part of the job. It's a
Yeah.
real as part of openings and closings and programming. And I think like partly why I've been able to have more shows is because this first show I had, people sold work.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, cool.
And
And they're like, oh.
it's kind of a big deal for artists too, because if you sell out this show,
Yeah.
the expectation is now that you'll sell out this next show.
Right.
And then when that doesn't happen and the value of the work plummets,
Yeah.
you're back working at the supermarket again. It's just reality.
Yeah.
So it's just like you feel like you escaped the supermarket or the whatever
Yeah.
the side hustle you don't want to be doing is. You escape it for a minute, and then you're just like, I'm a bird, and then you just get captured again,
Yeah.
and that's like, so this is like this really high, like stress moment. So you're just kind of like not in sales at all, like what you were saying. And
Yeah.
we're trying to hire these people that are like, gallerists or whatever, and they're obviously trying to
They sell shit.
make sales. That's kind
Yeah.
of like what they do is they kind of have
Yeah.
this group of artists and this group of collectors, and they're like trying to get them excited about each other, and then maybe that thing happens. And
I think so. I think that's, I think that then the curator becomes a sort of writer about the work, or like thinker about how to put these people in conversation that isn't just about something pretty flat, like everyone in here uses pink, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get someone to wrangle ideas for the space between artist and gallerist? And so the gallerist can do their job, which I imagine is selling things, because they own a store, basically. And it's on commission.
Right.
People's work.
Art is a speculative commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And you are that forecaster.
Right.
That is literally what you do. You go out and you consume all of the art, and you do the studio visits, you do all that
these
stuff,
are
and
the
you
people.
go, these people are dope.
Yeah.
Right? And you put them on the walls,
Yeah.
and then the collector is now like, relying on you, Essence.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my money behind this artist now.
Yeah.
And this is going to pay off, right?
Yeah.
Is that a pressure? Or are you just like, I don't even think about
I
that.
don't
I'm going
think
to push
about
that
it,
out of my
at least
mind.
right now. I don't really think about it because I feel like that's what the gallerist thinks about. And it feels kind of like if I'm the person out here like forecasting, then the gallerist is the person who owns the company I work for, who then is like, yo, person over here, you need to invest now. Because my forecaster, who's somewhere up here in like a weird room, has said this. It kind of feels like an oracle. And then like the person who's like, cool, gotcha. And they're like running to try to find people to like, support or sustain the forecast of the oracle, as opposed to the oracle themselves being the person to find people to invest in it. It's like you need the people who own the spaces to care what you think, and then their job is to find the people to support their financial transaction. That's what it feels like to me, because I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
That's like maybe what curator MFAs teach you is like this part, like this business side of it. I don't know what the curator
I
MFAs
don't
do.
know. I have not done that job either. And I will say though that like I do talk to a lot of people and I get their 2 cents on it, and I would have to say of everyone coming out of college feels super ill prepared for their job once they're in it.
Yeah.
And that's like that's real.
Yeah.
We all have to like do this trial by fire moment where I don't think anyone is really teaching anyone about the business end of this, because we're inventing it all of the time.
Yeah.
Because there was no way in 1980 you could have been going to school and someone could have said like, oh yeah, and be ready for art fairs because they're coming, you know? And like, because that was just a thing that happened and blew the entire model of everything all apart, and made like millionaires out of like Julian Schnabel or like whoever, you know what I mean? And now that model is sort of collapsing, and is that going to create a void? And there's all these other like whatever real art market stuff that I feel like maybe you and I feel like is either boring or oppressive, or it's kind of a yoke in a way. And we're like getting back to that capitalistic thing again, where it's like, can't we think of something else? Can't we think of another way? Because this aspect is like antithetical to what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And I'm not saying like, this is not an anti-capitalist rant. I would just like to say that it's just like it's a time use rant.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to use this time to like consume more art, make more art, do more.
Yeah.
And
I feel fine about that, at least currently, that's what I do. I'm like, I'm not absolutely disinterested, but it's hard for me to like prioritize it.
Yeah.
When it feels like I have a lot of other things to prioritize that are actually about the work and people and what's going to go out there.
Yeah.
And that feels actually removed from capitalism for me, because I'm like, these are people making shit.
Yeah.
Often under really hard economic conditions, but still producing work. That feels, genius to me. Yeah, so I'd rather just kind of be there.
So who are some of those artists that you feel like are like the ones that you would like us to talk to, and I don't know, maybe they could use more exposure, maybe they have too much exposure, I don't know. Whoever it is that you would like to hear from that could talk about their work in their words, and they could have as much time as they want.
Yeah, I mean, so Adie Roberson is a person who is multifaceted. She does a lot of sound work. She's a musician and also a painter. And I think her work is just so phenomenal and bizarre, and that the melding of sound with her like painting practice there's not a lot of space offered for her to do both things at the same time often, but she likes to, and she's making a movie right now, so I think, or experimental film, not a movie, but whatever it is, it's to say that she's a person, I think, who's deeply pushing whatever the bounds are for sort of, I don't think her aesthetic practice, but I think who she embodies. She's like a Black queer woman who doesn't play by whatever book around representational art. She doesn't do that. And whatever sound art even becomes imagined, it's just like she was in a punk band for like 15 years. Like she's just out here, she's wild, she's bizarre. Yeah. And I love her work so much. Sadie Barnett is another really awesome person who is based in LA and in Oakland. She has one project that's around her father, who founded the Panthers chapter in Compton, and it's his FBI file that she got, and then has made this entire installation that's been traveling with it. I think it's in San Diego right now. It's at the Cities Museum in San Diego. But it's been in Davis, it's been in the Bay, it's been in New York. Like, it's very incredible, and I just think she's like the bee's knees. So that's like one thing that she's done, but a lot of her work is about home and place through like family photography and a lot of like brightly colored, glittery backdrops, which I think it just looks incredible. And then Ashley Teamer, she's not in LA. You want LA people, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I forgot to tell you, we were kind of like, we're locating it. We just got to cut it off somewhere, so we thought geography. We don't know.
Geography's totally fair.
Like, we could have done it time. We could have done it all kinds of ways, but I don't know. So
well, that's cool. Anna Louisa also is a person who does a lot of really dope sound, installation, performance work. She's in LA. She went to CalArts. She's really incredible and amazing. Was in a collective called Black Salt for a long time. It's like, my brain can go on and on probably. But those are three pretty incredible people who are here right now.
Yeah, and you don't want to like bury us either, like we're going to do our best.
Sadie, Anna Louisa, they all do very different type of work, and I want them to have as much exposure and as much like prospects as humanly possible.
Cool, and we want to give it to them.
Yeah, they're great.
So awesome. So again, like, just thanks so much for being here and coming down here.
Yeah, Long Beach.
I know that like I have a lot of feelings about Long Beach and our geography and like how far I think we're perceived to be even farther than we are.
Yeah.
So if you could just like be so kind as to say like, that was convenient and we're not that far away. And no, I'm just kidding.
20 miles is
I'm not going to annihilate this perception.
But 20 miles is not far. Like, in reality, that's not it could take 30 minutes to get here.
It could. In theory, it could take 30 minutes to get here. Yeah.
And it takes 30 minutes. It's further for me to go to the beach from my house, even though it's only 11 miles away. Yeah.
Interestingly, though, I've always felt like there is a connection between Long Beach and Oakland, just as far as like being big port cities, having large African American communities, having like just all these like similarities, like socioeconomic similarities. Like
we share a lot of people. Like a lot of my family is like between like SoCal, like Los Angeles, and including Long Beach in this like broad map of SoCalness and East Bay. Yeah, but Oakland and Long Beach for sure, and a lot of people whose families are in either place. Yeah. Okay, that was a great interview. Thanks to Essence Harden for being on the show. Upcoming curated shows right now until September 9th. Refuge, Shinique Smith is at CAAM. July 7th is the opening for Bold Visual Language. Emory Douglas is at Lace. September 19th, Second Look Twice at MoAD. Coming up in October 2018, She Loves Her at the LGBTQ Center. If you have thoughts, ideas, comments, please contact us at Art Traffic. On Instagram is at ArtTrafficLA. And if you want to email us, arttrafficpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for listening.